I'm very, very happy and grateful for this invitation, for having me. And so, first of all, I have to thank all the organizers, the faculty, the department, and for hosting me and for giving me the possibility to share some of my ideas with you in I hope, a fruitful dialogue. And so, as Alejandra was saying, some of the idea of this talk are from this my latest book, and as you can see, there's also the picture in the cover is represent two mohais from the Eastern Island for reason that will be clear in a moment. And the idea of this book, the book is divided in three parts. In the first part, I try to summarize very briefly and in an introductive way what economists, how economists conceptualize, describes, and manage the idea of a common good, of a common. And so it's a standard theory. And in the second part, I try to make a more original exercise. I try to describe as a common things that are very important for our social life. For example, my idea is that things like the civicness of a population or the landscape, meaning the interaction between the environment and the perception of the people, or the global health, okay? We know how important is the global health from the pandemic on, and the quality of the public debate, so the information system, and all these things are common goods, okay? They are immaterial because they are not touchable, but they are crucial for the quality of our coexistence, for the quality of our communities. So, what is the reason why I want to describe these things as a common goods? Because the lesson that the commons teach us is that they are fragile. They have to be actively protected, like the environment, like natural resources. If we leave them to the market logic, they will be depleted, eroded, overexploited, and so on. And I think that also these immaterial goods are subject to the same logic, which is called the tragedy of the commons. The third part of the book is a tentative to find ways to protect and to develop these goods, these commons, using an idea of economic agent larger. An idea of economic agent which is closer to the idea of Homo sapiens than Homo economicus. So what happens if we consider that we are people and we are beings with emotions, we are able to prosociality, we are interested in our reputation and things like that, okay? If we enlarge our view of people from just self-interested agent to this more complex and pluralistic view, we will have at our disposal many other different tools that can be used to protect the commons. That's the idea. So, why the Eastern Island here? Because the Eastern Island is a very interesting example of the tragedy of the common. So at a certain point, the inhabitants of the island, they cut all the trees. Okay, there were giant palms, very scattered in the island, and at a certain time, because they were building houses, because they were building canoas. They were using the trees to build the mohais, and then they overexploited the resources until it was completely depleted. It's called a environmental collapse. Okay, so it's like a memento for us, what happened to the Eastern Island. So that's the first point. Trust is crucial. Sorry, I have to introduce trust. Trust is one of these immaterial commons. I think probably the most important, because trust is the lubricant of our social life. So without trust, we will be paralyzed. Our social, economic, political system will be paralyzed. So the first point is to justify why trust is crucial and why it is fragile, and how can we adopt, what can we do in order to protect trust, and what are the policy implications. Okay, just a few quotations from the classical philosopher. This is by John Locke, and that trust is vinculum societatis, that means it's the bond of society. Okay, in 1970s, Locke was well aware of this aspect. Another philosopher, John Stuart Mill, wrote that the advantage of humankind of being able to trust one another penetrates into every crevice and cranny of human life. The economical is perhaps the smallest part of it, yet even this is incalculable. Okay? More recently, Kenneth Arrow, he's a Nobel Prize winner for economics, says that trust is the lubricant of the social system, and much of the economic backwardness in the world can be explained by a lack of mutual confidence. Okay? So only from these three quotations we can have an idea of how trust is important is. But there are lots of data that correlate trust with the important economic variable. For example, here there's you can see this graph show a positive correlation between trust and the GDP per capita, the economic growth. Okay, and where there's more trust, the growth is more sustained. There are many studies that show that where trust is higher, there are less inequalities in the income distribution. The institutions are perceived as more just, and there are better educated and homogeneous population. And also has been found positive effect on financial development and even on foreign trade. And also scientists have discovered a correlation between the level of trust and the organizational success, and also individual well-being. So trust, the more, the better. That's the message. What is the problem? The problem is that we are losing trust. Okay, the trust is being overexploited, and the resource is going to be depleted. Okay, there are many different examples. This is just one: trust in governments in the United States from 1958 to 2022. You can see there are up and downs, but the trend is negative. Okay, these are data about trust in the Congress. As you can see, there is a decreasing. Systematic decrease in trust in institutions. This is a trust in Chilean population in different institutions, and this is the average from the OECD nations, countries, and this is the local level of trust. And as you can see, in Chile is systematically lower than the average of other industrialized nations. So there seems to be a problem. We need trust, but we are losing trust. We are eroding for some reason trust. And this is a problem because it is true that bad institution feeds distrust, but also that when there's no trust, there's no pressure on the institutions to get better. Okay, so it's a sort of circular causality that it's a vicious circle that leads to bad institution, to distrust, from distrust to even worst institution, and so on. So it's a circle that has to be stopped. It's a cycle that has to be somehow stopped. Okay, these are the data. Why I think trust can be described as a common. Okay, first I have to define what a common is. And economists usually describe goods, private goods, public goods, common, using two criteria. The first criteria is excludability, and the second criteria is rivalry. What does it mean that a good is excludable or not excludable, rival or not rival? Consider a typical private good, okay, a pizza. You buy a pizza, and when you buy a pizza, you are legally allowed to prevent other people to eat your pizza. Okay? When you own your pizza, you're the only one that can dispose of that pizza. If you want to offer, you can do it, but if you don't want to offer, other people are not allowed to eat your pizza. Okay? That means that private goods are excludable in this way. And they are also rival, meaning that the good cannot be enjoyed by different people at the same time. So if I eat my pizza, nobody else can eat the same pizza. Okay, so this is the idea of rivalry. And these two criteria describe every kind of private goods. On the other side, on the other extreme, there are public goods. And public goods are nor excludable nor rival. Meaning that if I take a walk in a park and I enjoy a beautiful sunset, which is a public good, and I'm not allowed to prevent other people to take the same walk and to watch the same sunset, for example. Okay, so I cannot prevent other people to enjoy the same good. At the same time, the public good is not rival, meaning that if I enjoy the good, I'm not consuming the good. Okay, so many other people can have access to the same good. Okay, public lighting, for example, in the street. Okay, if I benefit from a light in the street, okay, my enjoying that good doesn't prevent other people to enjoy the same good. Okay. The interesting thing is that the common goods are a sort of hybrid between private and public, because they are not excludable. I cannot prevent other people to enjoy the good, but they are rival, meaning that they can be consumed, they can be eroded, they can be exploited. Okay? So the typical example from an historical point of view is that of pasture. And that example was proposed by Garrett Hardin in an important paper in Science magazine published in 1976. And the idea of Hardin is this one. Consider an open pasture, okay? There are the shepherds that can take their sheep there and to feed them, and the use of the common is below. If the use of the common is below the carrying capacity of the lamb, all the user can benefit. Okay, but since the access to the pasture is open, because the good is not excludable, all the shepherds have an incentive to add another sheep. So not just one per shepherd, but 2, 3 more. Okay. Why? Because if I add a new ship, the benefit that I get from that additional ship will be all mine, will be enjoyed individually. But the cost in terms of erosion of the good, erosion of the pasture, will be divided, will be shared by all the participants, all the shepherds. So what's the implication is that the benefit is always greater than the cost. And in the economic reasoning, in this case, tells us that you have to add another sheep, another one, until the benefit is greater than the cost. Okay? And that's always the case. And in fact, at the end, okay, what happened that unless environmental costs are accounted for and addressed in the land use practices, eventually the land will be unable to support the activity. The good will be depleted. The resource will be no longer available, okay? Like the trees in the Eastern Island, okay? That's a kind of paradox, because we will be all happy to have the resource to prevent the depletion of the resource, but individually we have an incentive to destroy the resource, okay? That's called, that can be described using a simple game called the prisoner's dilemma. Probably many of you have already encountered this game. Suppose we have two players. These are the shepherds, and they have two strategies. Each keep sustainable or increase the number of animals, and keep sustainable or increase the number of animals. If we keep sustainable, we will be all happy, okay? We will have healthy animals, milk, and so on. But as long as I think that you will keep sustainable, I will have an incentive to increase the number of my sheep. Okay, because that leads me to an increase in my wealth, okay, but the cost will be supported also by you, okay? So in this case, if I add another 1, 2, 3 animals, I will enjoy an increase in my well-being, let's say, but you will be worse off. Okay, that's symmetrical. What's the best thing to do? If we all increase the number, the resource will be destroyed. So what's the best thing to do? A reasonable person would say, let's keep sustainable. Okay, but that's not the rational conclusion, unfortunately. Okay, a rational shepherd will always try to maximize his well-being, his income, for example. Okay, and as you can see, if I increase the number, whatever, irrespectively of what you're going to do, I will have a payoff, a situation which is better than the alternative. So if I increase the number, I can get 2 or 1. I can get 0 or -1. So in any case, this is the best thing to do for player A. And for player 2, it's exactly the same. I can get 2 or 1, 0 or -1. Here, it's always the best, the dominant strategy. So the equilibrium, what we can expect from people that are interested in their profit, let's say, is this. Okay, that's the equilibrium. What happened here that we will be much more happy, we will be happier in this situation, but this situation is not an equilibrium. Okay, it's not what rational shepherds do. Okay, that's a problem. That's why the commons are fragile, because there are a pressure towards that outcome. Okay? Trust. Let me describe very briefly and in very synthetic form what trust is. Consider a two-person relationship, player A and player B. A can trust or not trust. If A doesn't trust, we stay in the status quo. 0 for me, 0 for her. If I trust you, then you have to choose. And you can repay my trust and we will be both happy. Okay? If I
trust you, and you betray my trust, you will be happier, but I will be worse off, okay? So if I trust you and you are trustworthy, our collaboration leads to a result which was unattainable individually. So the consequences of cooperation are good here, but this outcome is exposed to the risk of betrayal here. So what these two players should do if they are rational? Okay, A think about B and knows that B would prefer 15 to 10, so is going to betray my trust. And to avoid this outcome here, player A will choose no trust. Okay, that's the equilibrium. So trust is fragile. First off, because it's not very rational to trust in this situation, and also because it's, especially in institutional, trust in institution is a common. Okay, let me tell you two stories to show why trust is a common, or to show the process through which we erode trust. The first story is the story of Benny Madoff. Probably some of you already heard about Madoff. Madoff was a banker, was a broker, an investor, and very wealthy, very well respected, with a huge reputation. And through this reputation, he could gather lots of money from very wealthy people and invest that money. But eventually, in 2008, he was arrested because the SEC, the authority, the financial authority in the US, discovered that he was stealing money from his clients. How much? About $65 billion. Okay, he was doing a traditional scam called a Ponzi scheme. So he was paying the interest to his client using the capital of other clients. So it was a huge scandal because he was well respected. So the breach of trust was perceived as outrageous. What happened? Okay, consider this map. In this map, these bubbles represent the geographical location and the number of Madoff's clients in the US. Okay, the size of the bubble represent the number of clients. The bigger ones represent thousands of clients. The smaller one, few numbers. And what's happened right after the scandal was exposed? That if we compute, if we measure the level of trust of American citizens in the banks and the bankers, we obtain graphs like this. Okay, where the number of Madoff clients is higher, okay, the trust on banks and on bankers is lower. Think about this. I'm not saying that the clients that Madoff frauded are now less trustworthy. Less trustful. I'm saying that all the population where the incidence of Madoff's clients is higher are less trustworthy. Less trustful less trust in banks and in bankers. What does it mean? That this trust is contagious. Okay, it spreads across the population because of the news spreads, because of some of people know directly a client, and so on, okay? So it spreads. Another story, very sad story, it's another scandal that emerged in 1972 in the US. What happened here? That from 1932, for 40 years, the public health service, the US Public Health Service, conducted a research on a small population in the village of Tuskegee in Alabama, okay, here in the South. And why this population? Because the incidence of a disease, syphilis, there was extremely high. Okay, so small villages, all black people. The sample was about 400 people plus 200 as a control, and they were identified as a study group, and weekly they underwent to very painful physical examination and so on. So for 40 years, the number of medical doctors followed the evolution of this disease on the bodies of these people. What happened at a certain time? That in the middle of the 40s, it was, I think, 1947, they discovered a sort of cure for that disease. Okay, that they discovered that penicillin was effective in reducing the symptoms of this disease, but they decided not to cure those people. Why? Because, as they tried to justify themselves when the scandal emerged, exploded, they said, we were interested in observing the disease, not in curing the people. Okay? What happened next? The scandal exploded, and this is a quotation from an interesting Quarterly Journal of Economics paper by Alson and Wanamaker, and they said that the historical disclosure of the experiment in 1972 is correlated with increases in medical mistrust and mortality. So after the scandal, people don't want to go to cure themselves with taking the advice from a medical doctor, especially black people. Our estimates imply life expectancy at age 45 for black men fell by up to 1.4 years in response to the disclosure, accounting for approximately 35% of the 1980 life expectancy gap between black and white men. What does it mean? That the breach of trust was such or caused such a damage on the public trust that black people stopped to cure themselves, and that attitude towards that mistrust towards the public health system led to a decrease in life expectancy. Okay, not just for the 400 people directly involved in the study, but for the black population of all the US. Okay, so again, in this case, you see how mistrust or distrust spread. Okay, it's contagious. So, what's the idea? The idea is that when you interact in a trusting relationship, especially when you are a member of an institution, let's say you're a politician, you're a banker, you're a university professor, you're a priest, okay, you're a medical doctor, and so on. You have an institutional identity. What happens? That a patient, for example, or a voters vote you, okay, trust you, and if you betray his trust, this betrayal doesn't remain confined in the relationship. Okay? This betrayal spreads, okay, on other people, other politicians, other medical doctors, other bankers, other professors, other priests, and so on. B1, B2, and Bn. All people, individuals that are similar in some respect to the one who betrayed people's trust, okay, or that person's trust. So if we discover that a single politician is corrupt, okay, this breach of trust has a negative effect not only for his reputation, but also for the reputation of all politicians. Okay, so you are preventing other voters to trust other politicians somehow. Okay, if you're a professor and you are incompetent, okay, or you're a doctor, you're negligent, you do the same thing. Okay, you cast the shadow of your untrustfulness on people that are somehow similar because they belong to the same institution. Okay, and through this mechanism, you see there's an asymmetry. One cheater, lots of people damaged by one who's cheating. Okay, so what can we do to mitigate the negative effect emerging from the common, from this tragedy of the commons applied to trust? Okay, the standard solution for economists are these two. You have to privatize a common good or you have to statalize a common good. But it's quite difficult to apply this standard solution to this kind of goods because, for example, you cannot place a price tag over trust. You cannot buy trust, or civism, or the quality of public debate. Okay, and you cannot statalize other kind of commons, global commons, for example, like global health, or consider the ozone layer. Okay, it's a common good, but you cannot statalize it. Or the Nile River waters. Okay, the Nile River, the waters flows through 9 different states, so it's going to be difficult to statalize that, this global common. So we need something else. What? There are there are a number of strategies that we can use in order to try to mitigate the negative effect of the tragedy of the commons. Okay, reputation, for example. These are just few that I want to share with you, and very, very briefly, just in a impressionistic way. Reputation, strong reciprocity, individual ethic, public ethic, and the so-called prophetic minorities. So, reputational accountability. How can we prevent people from exploiting other trust? Making them accountable, okay? Making the information about their behavior available to the public, okay? In this way, if these information are public, the game we described transforms. And they will play another game, which is a trust game, indefinitely repeated. And in this game, there is an incentive to invest in reputation. So there is an incentive to think twice before betray others' trust. Okay. This can be a very effective way, but there are limitations. Okay, and the main limitation are that this situation works well in small population when the information can be easily spread by gossip, for example. and you have to have perfect monitoring, so perfect accountability and no errors. That means, for example, that we need a very reliable information system. The media must be extremely reliable, okay, to let this strategy, this mechanism work. Okay. Otherwise, as this simulation shows us, otherwise the level of cooperation disappear, or it's extremely, extremely low. There's a second strategy, strong reciprocity. What is a strong reciprocity? Strong reciprocity is a human tendency to punish cheaters. Okay? If we have norms, rules, informal rules, when we see that someone is breaching those rules, we have a tendency to punish him, even though we don't have any direct benefit from that. Okay. Suppose, I don't know here in Chile, but in Italy, for example, we are not able to make a queue. Okay. When we have to catch a bus, the group like form a sort of I don't know, not a queue. When you are in England, when you catch a bus, you have to respect the queue. If you skip the queue, you will be punished. By who? By all others people that are in the queue. Okay. What interest they have? They have no interest, just a cost. But we have a sort of innate tendency to punish cheaters in this case. There's a huge amount of data on this. This mechanism helped us when we were we lived in small societies as hunters and gatherers, hundreds, thousand years ago, to enforce covenants, to enforce cooperation among people. There were no institutions, there were no police, judges, and so on. So this decentralized monitoring and enforcement was very, very useful. So one of the problems with this system is that he has some side effects. Okay, this is just an example of an experiment when people should cooperate, they are not able to cooperate. When you give them the possibility to punish the free riders, those who doesn't cooperate, you see the level of cooperation increase and become efficient. That's the idea of strong reciprocity. But there are problems because sometimes, because the punishment, it's hard to do, but it's also hard to receive. So why are you punishing me? Okay, why are you yelling at me, or why are you blaming me? Who are you? Okay, that's a problem of legitimacy. If I don't give you the authority to punish me, okay, your punishment will be ineffective. Okay, or it can also elicit a counter punishment. Okay, who are you? I react possibly violently on people who punish me. Okay, so we can have vendetta and feuds and so on. And there's also another problem, that this altruistic punishment is very culture dependent. There are cultures where, like in southern regions of Europe, where people doesn't punish the cheaters, people tend to punish the cooperators. So it's called antisocial punishment. So it can be a solution somehow in some places, but with limitation. Okay, rule 3. Rule 2. Rule 3, individual ethic. That's an important point, because we quite recently discovered that when we do something, when we work, for example, or when we study, or when we play, Okay, we do a lot of things not because of the positive consequences that our action will produce, but because we like what we do. Okay, we do, most of us, I think, we like to do things well. Okay, when we work, when we teach, and so on. So we are intrinsically motivated. So we don't need a reward to do what we want, what we think it's correct to do. It's the right thing to do. The reward is just a sort of acknowledgement of what we did, but it's not the reason why we did that thing. So intrinsic motivation, we are intrinsically motivated, and we are subject to deontological values. We think that there are certain things that, independently of the consequence, are the right things to do. Okay? And many of us, we are willing to comply to a norm unconditionally. Okay, when honest people pay taxes, for example, they do that not because of calculation, okay, not because we compute our expected utility. What the risk of being audited, of being caught cheating on or evading taxes? No. We think taxes are the right thing to do, the right thing to pay, because we contribute to the production of public goods, and so we pay taxes. When we are honest, when we refrain from stealing things, for example, we do that not because of most of us, not because of the fear of being caught, but because we think it's not good, it's not the right thing to do, okay, stealing. So we are unconditionally on this. So this kind of reasoning modify the way we play the trust game. Okay, why? Because if we, that's the point, it's epsilon. If we do the right thing, even though the consequences of our doing are not that good, okay, here I get 10, but I get 10, repaying your trust. That's the right thing to do. Or if I betray you, I get 15, which is better, okay, but I get a higher payoff doing the wrong thing, okay. This ethical consideration may lower my perceived payoff. So I can prefer getting less by doing the right thing than getting more by doing the wrong thing. So if this kind of mentality, if this kind of reasoning is spread on a society, okay, we can reduce the problem of the erosion of trust. Okay, so it's a cultural thing. It's a matter of values that are very important for our societies, and that can be fostered or can be destroyed, okay, by the public discourse, for example, or by the examples of leading figures, okay, politicians or the church or other figures, entrepreneurs and so on. Okay, there's also a public side of this ethical concern, which I call public ethic. And in particular, I focus on one idea that has been developed by philosopher Martin Hollis and two economists, my supervisor, Robert Sugden, and another one is Michael Bacharach from Oxford University. They worked a lot on this idea of we thinking. What's the idea? The idea is that we can switch our mode of reasoning when we interact with others from an I mode, which is self-centered, to a we mode we consider as a team. Okay, so consider a football team. What's the mode of reasoning of the single individual player in a football team? They all want to win. But to win, each of them have to do their part. Okay? If they were all self-interested, okay, in the I mode, all players will try to score. which is the best way to lose a game. Okay, the best way to win a game is to organize and coordinate the actions in a way that just one is going to score, to maximize the probability just one score at the end. So that's the we thinking. So, and how we can promote this we thinking using what economists calls frames or narratives. So we have to describe our interaction in a way to make the we mode salient. I'll make you a very simple example. Do you remember the prisoner's dilemma? Okay, when we let a real player in the lab play this game with real money, we observe that a certain number of people doesn't play the equilibrium. They are smart enough to cooperate, okay, and to go home with a higher amount of money. We can increase their willingness to cooperate, changing the frame. For example, one experiment was, in one experiment, the experimenter, in the instruction, the experimenter wrote, you're about to play a community game. Okay, the game is like this, the money are the same, and so on. And to another group, they said, you are about to play the Wall Street game. Okay. What happened? Just changing the label, changing the frames, you modify the expectation about other people's behavior. And why? Because in the community, we expect that all helps. Okay, the typical behavior is a helping behavior, which is not typical of Wall Street. And in the first case, the rate of cooperation increased very much. And in the Wall Street game, the rate of cooperation decreased very much. So we can, changing the frame, changing the narrative, we can modify people's behavior. Inducing them to be more trustworthy, for example. Okay? That's what I call public ethics. So frames and narrative change our beliefs about others' behavior because they elicit social norms, for example. Okay, in this case, consider this game in a we mode. In an I mode, the best thing to do for player A is not trust to avoid being betrayed. In a we mode, we focus on what? On our joint payoff. So on this and on this. Okay? That's the best for us. Okay? That's the worst. So people tend to coordinate here when we think. Okay. The final rule, it's refers to the so-called prophetic minorities. What I mean by prophetic minorities, my consideration is this, that social change doesn't occur because the majority of people modified their beliefs or their values or their worldviews. Now, social change happens in a chaotic way, okay? Social change happens when a certain number of people, a small number of people, activate a contagious process of changing. So, to change things, sometimes you need one person. Okay, there are lots of examples, and I see two examples. One is Sherwood Rowland, and the other is Muhammad Yunus. Rowland is a chemist. He was a chemist, a Nobel Prize winner for chemistry. And in 1974, he discovered that in the atmosphere, something bad was happening. We were destroying the ozone layers. okay? And without the ozone layers, the Earth is like the life on Earth is like the life on a microwave oven, okay? So we need the ozone layers. But we were destroying because we were polluting the atmosphere with chemicals that were destroying. So Chevreul-Roland told the results or shared the results of his research with colleagues, but it was dismissed. It wasn't taken seriously. So not only academia, their colleagues dismissed him, but the industry, the chemical industry, very powerful, that was producing that chemicals, started a defamatory campaign against Roland. Saying to the journals that he was a spy paid by KGB. Okay, so it was a very tough time for him. A very tough time for him. So he was smart. He decided to leave academia, leave industry aside. He tried to ally with young people, with the member of the young. Environmentalist groups, the first environmental groups, and with the energy of these young people and the solid scientific evidence, in very few years, they succeed in leading to the signature of the Montreal Protocol, which is a protocol signed by nowadays more than 200 countries, that banned the use of the CFC, of those chemicals. Okay? That's one story. The other one is Muhammad Yunus. He's an economist. He's a Nobel Prize winner as well, but not for economics, but for peace. And Yunus started the microcredit movement. So he invented a way to do banking to the benefit of people, non-bankable people, very, very poor people, using trust as a main way to interact with those people. And he was just one, and he was able, after some times, to help millions of people to escape poverty. Okay? So, as you see, very big social changes started or initiated by just one person. So we have to identify those prophetic minorities and give them power and value and power. Okay, that's a fifth and final strategy that we can use to try to protect trust in institutions in this case. Okay, that's a summary and a final point. One of the stronger critique to the idea of collective management of commons is that it implies a coercion. Okay, it implies some form of control that limit people's freedom. Why? Because if I'm one of that shepherd and I want to bring another, and I'm allowed to do, and I want to bring another sheep on the pasture, why you have to stop me? Okay, that's an interference. It's a limitation of my freedom. Okay, the interesting thing is that just one idea of freedom. It's the so-called negative freedom or negative liberty, okay, using the Isaiah Berlin classification. And negative freedom is no coercion. I'm free if you don't interfere with my choices. But there's also a positive idea of freedom, okay? Amartya Sen, Nobel economist, Nobel Prize winner, is one of the champion of this position. And the positive freedom, so negative freedom is freedom from coercion. Positive freedom is freedom of doing something. Okay, it's an active freedom and it's called also liberty, more precisely, and it's something similar to autonomy. What does it mean, autonomy? It means that I am free to impose limit to myself, okay? To impose rule to my behavior and to my choices, and especially when I interact with other person. And for example, consider a mature democracy. There are rules, there is a constitution, and those rules are a form of coercion, or are the rules that coordinate, that helps us coordinating our action for the common good, okay? These rules, binding rules, cannot be interpreted as an obstacle to personal freedom, but instead represent the necessary condition for any shared project. So the collective management of the commons must be structured not so much around repressive constraints, that's what I think, but on the basis of a positive vision of liberty that helps us thrive as an individual and as community at the same time. Okay? Last two slides. Let me conclude with a quotation from Elinor Ostrom. She's an economist, the first woman to win a Nobel Prize in economics in 2009, and she devoted her life to the study of the commons. And at the end, that's the final sentence from the Nobel lecture, and she said this: the most important lesson derived from my intellectual journey is that humans have a more complex motivational structure and more capability to solve social dilemmas than posited in earlier rational choice theory. We have the potential to solve the tragedy of the commons, okay? Designing institution, however, she said, designing institution to force entirely self-interested individuals to achieve better outcomes has been the major goal posited by economists for governments to accomplish for much of the past half-century. Neglecting this point here and assuming that we all are mainly self-interested, what we have done for the past century, we tried to build the institution, to design institution able to force people to cooperate, okay? That's the wrong way to do this. Why? Because extensive empirical research leads me to argue that instead, the core goal should be to facilitate the development of institutions that bring out the best in humans. So institutions that are able to activate our social resources, our social abilities, okay? We need to ask how diverse institutions help or hinder the innovativeness, learning, adapting, trustworthiness, level of cooperation of participants, and the achievement of more effective, equitable, and sustainable outcome. That was the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vittorio. Anna, en ese momento es un momento para preguntas, así que si alguien tiene una pregunta puede alzar la mano y vamos a hacerle llegar este micrófono. Aquí hay una pregunta entonces.
Thank you, Vittorio, for an interesting presentation. I have three related questions, I would say, kind of reflections as well. I got stuck with the trust analysis. And I was thinking that, is that distrust the institutions or the system is a distrust process, or is a withdrawal behavior, is the first question. What I was thinking is that maybe it's not that people just distrust the whole system, it's just that they believed there are more cheaters out there, and they withdraw from the system in order to prevent that something bad happened to them. I'm not distrusting the system, just preventing myself to being cheated, like the others did. That's one question. Another question which is related to that is that if we assume the detrimental effect of cheaters on trust, is that an enduring effect? I mean, how much can you distrust the bank system, given that from time to time someone cheats you or cheats some people out there? And it might be possible that this is just a momentum, something that endures for a limited period of time. And if that is transitory, then should we expect a distrust effect as shown here only when there are more options available compared to where you're facing a monopoly, for example? So, for example, if you distrust the bank system, there's no alternatives out there. So you can distrust, but either way, you have to use it in order to get money for your investment or whatever. So is the pure experiment a comparison between alternatives versus monopolies in order to determine the precise effect of cheaters on trust? These are three related questions.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you, Raul. I agree with all your remarks, and I think that so the first point was about withdrawal. Okay,
yeah.
Withdrawal.
Whether the effect is distrust,
yeah,
or rather withdrawal behavior.
Yeah, but I think the withdrawal in the private sphere is a consequence, is a reaction of distrust in the institution. Okay, there's an interesting book by Albert Hirschman. Okay, and I think in English it's called The Passion and the Interest. And he has this idea of cycles, okay? Cycles, historical cycles. Periods where people are public-spirited, okay? Think about, the end of the 60s in Europe, or even in California, the civil rights movements and so on. There's lots of engagement, and the people have hopes. Okay, then something happened. Their trust, their hopes are disillusioned, are betrayed, and then they retire in the private sphere. But when you retire in the private sphere, things get worse and worse. Okay, so this decline calls for a new season of engagement. Okay, and you will see another generation of young people. Usually, they are energetic, trying to change things. So this is and I think it's similar. These cycles are similar to what are you saying about the withdrawal from the public sphere to the private sphere, but there are long-lasting effects, I think, because when you refrain from demanding accountability from the institution, you are letting them doing whatever they want. Okay, so the quality of institution tends to decrease. So, and I think the first point of this chain is that people feels cheated somehow, or their expectation. So why we live together? We live together because we hope in a configuration of relationship that lead to mutual advantage. Okay, the rationale for social cooperation is
trying to be able to obtain results that we cannot obtain as individuals. So if this promise is betrayed, because I do my part, you do my part, you do your part, you get the benefit, I don't get anything, okay? The social contract explodes. So that's why people, and you know, this trust can be, I think, one of the elements in this. And the second remark was about, do you remember?
Yeah, the long-lasting or transitory effects of this trust in conditions of monopoly and multiple alternatives.
Yeah, I think it's a cycle. It's a cycle. We can observe cycles, but if you there are interesting data about the intergenerational transmission of this trust. Okay, and you see that during the life people changes their attitudes, but generation after generation, the level of trust decreases systematically. So we have cycles, but there's also a trend. Okay, there's also a negative trend, and I very much agree with your idea that monopoly or a more dispersed market can have an effect. That's why we have to defend pluralism, even in the economic system. In Italy, for example, years ago, there was a proposal of reformation of the bank systems. And some of the proponents were against small banks owned by the investors, I mean by small investors, and they are called community bank or cooperative banks and so on, because they were saying, look, you are too small, so there's a systemic risk, you can be a problem for the stability of the system, of the financial system, and so on. When the pandemic arrived, those banks performed much better than the other ones. Okay, one of the lessons is that biodiversity is a virtue, even in the economic system. So we should have many different forms of firms, many different forms of banks, and because the needs, the way we respond and meet people's needs can be very different. Okay, and so from this point of view, I think that pluralism can be an antidote to the monopoly and to the obliged choice that a monopoly implies. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Hello. Yeah. First of all, thank you, Professor, for the talk. It's very interesting topic. So, if this trust leads to bad institutions, why Chile has one of the best well-known institutions and overall strong institutions, knowing that in the level of distrust, we are below the standards of the OECD. How would you describe that? Even though we had an important social outbreak 6 years ago, the way I see it, great institutions are equal to great development, according to the Prosperity Index in 2024.
Okay, I don't know really. Okay, okay. Oh, usually in most of countries, the most trusted institutions are the safety institution, like the army, like the police, and in Italy, the carabinieri, which is a sort of military police. They are last instance resources somehow. But I'm not sure if that's a good sign, because you have to trust those kind of institutions, because we don't have trust in your fellow citizens somehow. Why I need to trust the police if I trust my fellow citizens? So I don't know, because I should look at the data, but there could be a trade-off between trusting this kind of safety institutions and interpersonal trust in other people in general. Okay, so I don't know, but I don't want to say anything else, because I know, unfortunately, so little about the Chilean situation, and but I think you are an extremely interesting case to study, because of all these social dynamics and the historical heritage of a huge breach of trust that you lived in the 70s, from the 70s and the 80s. So I think this can be a very interesting laboratory to explore and also to implement policies to restore trust in institutions. Okay, but you know, it's a researcher's desire, and but I don't want to express any judgment, or because I know very little about your situation. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question too. We are studying, or I am studying to be a public administrator. And you as a researcher, what advice do you have for us for what we can do to innovate or better the institutional, or to solucionar the problems that you today show us?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. Thank you. And I teach to students, one of the courses that I teach is for, they want to work in the public administration. So, and what I always say to them is they have to perceive themselves as allies of the private sector, as allies of and facilitators for the citizens, not gatekeepers, if you know what I mean. And because here the important thing is that the office you're going to receive, it's not a private good, okay? It's a public good. So you have a you will have, I think, a public responsibility. So the power you will have to exert and is proportional to the responsibility you have to feel towards the other citizens. So that's, I think, can be a good attitude to use the power you will have. And a second point is that you should always try to keep you informed and formed in a sort of long-lasting or life learning, process, because the innovation are so quick and happen so fast that one of the problems with the public administration is that it's difficult to keep up with the innovation sometimes. I'm very happy because in the past few years I had a course on a master for people already working in the public administration, so older people, and they learn a lot. They are very interested, and they have an experience. So teaching to them, it's very enriching also for me. And what happened that in these years they took places, crucial places in the health system, for example, in the urban planning and so on. And by chance, I met them and to collaborate. And the collaboration, the possibility to innovate, to bring the results of innovative research to the field, thanks to them, okay, was very easy. Okay, that's so. But why? Because they continued to form themselves, to learn and learn. So that's one. I don't know if it's advice, but it's my experience.
Thank you.
Okay.
Probably there was
Yeah, another one.
Thank you for this, and I like this side of the economy, and I need to, what advice would you give to the young people who wants to study this side of the economy, and especially for Chilean people who is so long for Europe or American? What is your advice for your experience?
Okay, you should take Alejandra courses. No, you know, it's one of my professor, John Lees from Chicago University, he always says that there's a lot of there's a lot of things that we can do for people, but people doesn't realize that we can do things for them. Okay, and as economists, for example, as experimental economists or behavioral economists, firms, public administration, they can benefit quite a lot from what we can do to that with them, not to them, with them. And so there will be an increasing demand for this kind of skills. So my suggestion is try to push your professors to teach you things that can be useful and applied, but they already do that, but better in the society, okay? Because we are not just scientists, okay? We try to be scientists, to do things in a rigorous way, but we are social scientists. So if our work doesn't have a positive effect on the society, we are betraying people expectation. We are wasting money, public money, somehow. I know that this is not very popular position. Many of my colleagues doesn't agree with this. They say you have to publish good science. That's true, but you have also to engage in public debate. You have to talk with students. You have to write in your editorial in the newspapers. You have to be engaged in the social life of your community, and not just being in the ivory tower of the scientists. And as economist, I'm not a theoretical physics, okay? I'm an economist. So as an economist, I have the possibility and the ability to have an impact on social life, and this ability is also responsibility, I think. So yeah, that's the way I live my profession. But I'm not alone, actually. We have, it's called a Scuola di Economia Civile. It's a civil economy school in Italy where we try to foster this kind of way of doing economics. Okay. Thanks. Nice questions.